That genie is not going back in the bottle. When you find out your accountant uses a calculator, do you turn around to him and tell him, no, now you're not an accountant? He thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. Every idea I came up with was, this is it, this is the one, you've hit the nail on the head, you're a bright spark, you're standing out there.
The tool may be free, repeating what Paul said, knowing what to do with it.
Is there room for AI in education, both for the teachers and for the children? Absolutely.
I'm saying, and the message that I'm trying to get out on this podcast,
I call it a self-guided mega prompt.
Good day. Today I've got Carlos here. Carlos, can you maybe just tell me the correct pronunciation of your surname? Is it Batista?
Batista. Yeah,
Batista.
Carlos Batista.
Like the fast one at the end, Batista. Okay.
Correct.
So, Carlos, you and I have been connected on LinkedIn for quite some time, I've noticed. I think you sent me a message in 2019, which means, there's been quite a lot of things happening in the world since that time. I've only really discovered LinkedIn as a better social media platform than the others. I won't mention any names, but I've caught myself spending more time reading articles and reading things on LinkedIn that I used to do on any of the other social media platforms. And I came across an article that LinkedIn flagged for me to read, and it's about AI, which is the theme of this podcast, AI in education specifically. But before we get into that, I want to read two pieces from that article. But before we get to that, please tell us, what do you do on LinkedIn? I think you're not an educator, but you are very involved with AI. So maybe elaborate a little bit, sell yourself.
Sure. So the way I've got myself on LinkedIn at the moment is the LinkedIn Intelligence Coach. The journey started off just before you actually got the invitation in 2018, where I decided to leave the corporate world and go it out on my own. And I started off as a business coach. Then, as we know, in 2020, the whole COVID lockdown happened. So I had to do a bit of an adjustment there. And as I was leveraging LinkedIn for my business, I then looked at, so how can LinkedIn help me sustain and grow my business? And that led me into being a LinkedIn coach. Since then, 2023, AI came into the picture. And I don't necessarily follow the latest trends, but whenever something new comes out that piques my interest, the first thing I do is I go and find out more about it, because I want to know, is it useful for my business and how can I apply it to my business? Obviously, AI, without a doubt, is useful for any business. It all comes around how you're actually using it. So since 2023, I have evolved through 4 or 5 different stages in AI, where now I am talking about using AI as your thinking partner and not as a tool that thinks for you, which is where majority of the people have gone. So at this stage, I am the LinkedIn Intelligence Coach.
Okay.
And
okay.
You could say I'm in education, because majority of what I publish on LinkedIn is educating my network on my journey, what I've discovered, and how they can use it to their benefit.
Okay, so I don't know. I read an article this morning. I don't know if you came across it, of Magda Wilzika, who said that when she came back from Davos, she basically wants a delete button on AI. She's saying in so many words, and apparently she has had some kickback from the industry, that AI has added zero value to the world. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I did see that article. I came very close to commenting on it. However, I tend to back away from contradicting people online and getting into discussions where it's you said and I said and he said and she said. But I do have an opinion. And my opinion is quite simply this. Firstly, that genie is not going back in the bottle. Okay, so people can say what they like, people can read what they like into it, they can resist it as much as they like. It's growing literally daily, literally daily. I am willing to state that before AI, what used to take us 3 to 5 years now most probably takes 1 to 2 years. Okay. Now, the main reason I am finding that people are resisting AI and talking AI down is because, in my view, they haven't done enough to find out how AI works and how they can leverage it. Majority of people are out there just putting in a question, getting an answer, and they're either generating content or they're making an opinion based on that. Now, what they need to understand is that AI was birthed with a large language model. So I think 2022 is the most up-to-date one. So everything available online up to 2022 was used to train this AI. So now you go and ask it a question, you prompt it, and it goes and looks at the LLM and gives you a response. That's not your response. That's its response. What I have discovered, especially over the last 3 to 6 months, is you have the capability to train your AI to think like you, to act like you, to talk like you, to basically be you, apart from actually being a human. I mean, let's not be ridiculous on that part. But you can basically do a brain dump onto AI. So everything you have here, you put onto AI, and then you think with AI to get your message out quicker, clearer, but it is still you. One thing I have discovered, and I've done research on this, and anybody who doubts what I'm saying, please feel free to go and research what I'm saying. I've done the work on this. Your AI has 3 points of reference when you prompt it: the LLM, the internet, and saved memory. Okay, so you prompt it. If there's no saved memory, it's going to go to the LLM. It will only go to the internet if you ask it to. I see people referencing, when you ask the AI, it goes and gets the information from the internet. No, it doesn't. It will only go to the internet if you specifically ask it to go and reference the internet. It references its LLM. Now, if you train the saved memory, so if you put your brain dump into the saved memory and you prompt it, that gets priority number 1. It will now look there. It will not touch the LLM. So what does that mean? Literally what I have done is I've taken, because we know what our minds are like, okay? So in my case, I've got 58 years worth of experience, knowledge, challenges, you name it, everything is up here. And we all know that when you're trying to remember something, you struggle to find it. That's because it's a big mess up there. The data is like, we've seen what the neurons and the pathways look like. It's a mess. So you struggle to find that information quickly enough and effectively enough. By brain dumping onto AI, what I have done is I've taken everything, put it neatly into folders, into cabinets, well indexed, and I can now go and ask it to find the information, and it literally does it in seconds. But what information is it? It's mine. It's me. So it's no longer AI talking. It's me talking. I am using AI to sort through my information and bring out the message quicker than if I had to sit there, okay, so now and this, and then make notes, and that's basically it. Now, in that case, I would have to disagree 100% with that article. It's added immense value to my business, immense. So what I am reading is that the people who are saying it's added nothing, it's because they are literally using it as a faster Google search. They're going in, they're prompting, they're hitting enter, what comes out, fantastic, there we go. Now, here's one thing that, again, I have discovered, created, and named, which is called the commoditization curve. So 2023, AI came out, people are prompting, getting these answers. They were like, whoa, this is awesome, check this out. And off they went. More and more people started doing that. You get to the top of the curve. We've now hit saturation. What do I mean by that? Everything you see being posted, used AI, sounds the same, looks the same. Why? Because it's referring to the same LLM. It's referring to the same database. So what happens? Now the curve starts going down. Because now, I mean, you can just look on LinkedIn. I see it daily. People saying, oh, all the posts are sounding the same and the same phrases are being used and this and that. So the interest for that is now dropping. In the middle of that drop, that's where thinking comes in. If you now train the AI so that it's you, now you start going back up again. And that commoditization is where people are. Everybody's still using it as a fast Google search. You're never going to sound like yourself in that case. I mean, just this morning, I saw a post and then I went and created content that will be going out tomorrow where people are now promoting or saying and claiming that by prompting better, by making AI think deeper, your response is going to be a lot better. Yeah, not really. Because here's the thing. I read some of those prompts. I mean, the one post even said, these 10 prompts will ensure you gain authority on LinkedIn in 30 days. I'm like, whoa, that's a heavy statement. So, whenever I see something like that, I need to go check for myself. And here's the thing. Those prompts were saying things like, act like a marketer and blah, 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 blah. Act like a LinkedIn expert and blah, 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 blah. My response to that is simple. If I'm telling AI to act like, when is it actually going to be me? It must stop acting like other people. It must be me. It's me. I'm the one with the knowledge and the thinking frameworks and the thinking patterns and the way I talk and how I say things and why I say things. And that is the reason why someone like that, who is an authority, extremely successful, would make a comment like that, because they have received comments from people who are using AI literally as a fast Google search. But when you start using it as a thinking partner, I'm telling you now, people will not say or claim that you are using AI to create the content, because it's me. I mean, when you find out your accountant uses a calculator, do you turn around to him and tell him, no, you're not an accountant? That's not you. The calculator is a tool that allows him to do math a lot quicker. Can you do math with your head? Yeah, absolutely. But those figures, how long is it going to take you? How many pieces of paper with all the multiplication, division, and the commas before you get to the answer? So what does he do? He takes a calculator, uses his skill to get it a lot quicker. That's what I'm doing with AI. I'm using AI to get this working quicker. That's basically it. So I disagree. I disagree totally. It's because it's being used incorrectly.
Okay, so that's such a valid point, and it's heading into the direction that this podcast was originally called into life, is because of the fact that the large language model has what is termed as intelligence. Um, what it actually does, which we call intelligence, is it can recognize context of a conversation, which a normal, I've had it in some of my previous podcast episodes that we've talked about it, where a normal computer code can do the same thing over and over and over a million times faultlessly. If the code is correct, but it cannot adapt to something that is outside of that code. Whereas the language model, because it's based on language, can actually adapt to the context of the conversation. And the way that the mathematics, and this obviously fascinates me as a maths tutor, the mathematics behind the large language model is all based on probabilities and weights of certain words. So we don't have to go into the technical details, but it does allow, and this I'm throwing this back to you in terms of what you've just explained about using it as a thinking partner. What it does allow is something called drifting and hallucinations. And that's a regular objection thrown back to the large language models is you drift or you hallucinate. You know, I've personally experienced it where it seems to be caught in a loop by itself. You know, it just doesn't want to listen to instructions or prompts. It just keeps on repeating the same nonsense over and over again. And what I have found personally with the large language models in that regard is that if you look carefully, you find that if as it gets to know you better, and again I'm throwing this back to you for comment, as it gets to know you better, it starts pleasing you more. So what I have done is sometimes I will tell it deliberately to think like I'm wrong, you know, to correct me, to actually oppose me in my questions or my prompts, just to get it out of that mold of its memory, because it will tell you how good you are, when in the meantime, everybody else, all humans will tell you, bad idea. And I will praise you and tell you how good it is. You know, it's very good at what I call people pleasing. So what do you make of that?
You are correct. My initial use of AI, I would say for the first 2 years, it thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. Every idea I came up with was, this is it, this is the one, you've hit the nail on the head, you're a bright spark, you're standing out there. So I totally agree with you there. Now, when you were talking about the hallucinations and it keeps coming back with the same answer, that in my view again talks to the limitations of the LLM. You know, because you've stretched it as far as you could and as deep as you could with your prompts, but it's got to a point where it cannot go deeper because this is the answer. This is the answer. There is nothing else. And you were talking about the predicting, and that's also what it does. So it will start a statement, and then it will say to itself, what is more than likely the statement that will follow this one based on my experience and my training. That's the LLM. That's the predictability. Now, if you want to get it out of that loop, get it out of that predictability, give it a different database to work with. And this is where I'm talking about the saved memory, which is what I have. So whenever I start a brainstorming session, which ultimately every time I prompt AI, it's a brainstorming session. I'm not just saying to it to deliver this. I'm saying to it, right, now go into my memory, and based on this topic, I want to go deeper. I want to go this way. I want to go that way. And almost every single time it will say to me, you've got a point there. However, have you considered this and this and this? Because I feel you've missed this and this and this. It gets me thinking in different directions. It pushes me out of my comfort zone. It pushes me out of the norm. Now, why does it do that? Because I have taught it to do that. I've said to it, do not agree with me on everything. I want you to push the boundaries. I want you to keep asking questions until you are assured I am certain of what I am talking about. I've said to it that I'm an innovator. I'm creative. I like, a lot of people talk about the comfort zone and your comfort box. I don't know what that is because I've never lived in one of those. You know, I tend to get under people's skin because I'm always pushing the boundary. I'm always questioning. You know, if someone turns around to me and says, "Well, it's like that because I said so," sorry, that's the wrong thing you say to me. That's not good enough. I am always going to question and test and push and find out. I want to know why, not just why you think it's like that, but the why must be presented in a way that it makes sense to me, not to you, to me. So by putting my way of thinking, my way of brainstorming, my way of rationalizing, my way of pushing the boundaries into AI, I am basically having a brainstorming session with myself. It's no longer going into the LLM and getting stuck in this loop because the LLM has been taught, listen, 1 plus 1 is 2, and 0 plus 0 is 0, and that's it. I will push it. Because then I'll bring in binary and say, no, actually 0 plus 1 is 1. It's, you know, or 0 times 0 is 1. It's different. So I agree with you if you're using the LLM. Now, the other thing that I need to mention, which I haven't mentioned, is, which again, people have got a misunderstanding, and even I had at the one stage until, and here's the other thing. Have you tried questioning your AI? Have you tried asking it how it got trained and what it does? Try it. It's going to tell you the truth. Now, one thing people misunderstand, and like I said, I did as well, is the more you use your AI, the more it learns about you. Yes and no. Because, I mean, as you know, each session has a limitation, then you have to start another session, right? So I don't know how many hundreds of sessions I have. So people think, and I used to at the one stage, that when you then start a new session, it looks at those. It doesn't. Not unless you specifically tell it to. And you've got to do that by saying, this session is a follow-up from our session called, and give it the name of that session, and then press enter. It's then going to go into that session, update itself, and come back to you and say, okay, I've got the information, let's go. So you have to intentionally train your AI, which is give it your information, ask it to summarize back to you so that you agree, and then you say to it, add this to your memory for future reference. Then it will, and press enter. Then you'll see it will say, adding to memory. Okay, I've added it to memory.
Okay, so that is a very important point that I wanted to comment on, because I've also done some research, on the large language models and specifically what happens behind the scenes. It's just something that fascinates me, and I've discovered that if, for instance, you correct a spelling mistake in a chat, like for instance, you speak your native language and AI can speak that language to a certain extent, but it sometimes makes spelling mistakes. And if you correct it, it doesn't learn from that. It only learns from that in that chat where you're busy with. So one would think that the large language models, the part of the training that they're all talking about, is that it also learns from its interactions with people. In terms of the data centers, the big brains behind the LLMs, it doesn't. It only learns from you in that chat. And unless, like you said, you specifically tell it to store it to memory, it will also not remember that in a different chat, where it's still just the two of you. And that's sort of like a limitation, but by design, because the owners of these LLMs, which is OpenAI and Anthropic and Google and XAI and so forth, they specifically don't want training data to be corrupted by malicious players. So they don't want political interference, for instance, by somebody who's prompting all sorts of thinking styles into the LLM so that it starts influencing the thinking in other conversations. And there's a fine line between what is malicious learning and what is not malicious learning, and they haven't, found that line yet or how to work that. So what they literally do, and this is according to my research, is they have humans like you and me, people who enjoy this, and they literally go through the logs of interactions of millions and millions of people, and they look for interesting conversations, and then they say, oh, okay, we see here's a spelling error. Let's give that through to the large language model for language proficiency for next time.
Mhm.
But let's move on to your article, the comment that you made on the article in the context of education, specifically schools. Okay, so I just want to ask you a quick question and then I'll elaborate on my point. How aware are you of the agentic approach in AI? Have you dabbled with that at all? Have you agents?
I've heard of AI agents. I haven't delved into that topic yet.
Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of background as I understand it to guide the conversation. But
Sure.
I want to read, and obviously you know this, but I want to read for the benefit of the viewers of this video. The article or extracts from an article that you commented on, and then we can take that into education where we've got teachers and we've got learners. And we need to
Hmm.
draw a very fine line between those two parties as well, because they will use AI differently. So the article was written by Paul Beardsley, and he said, AI is a power tool, but it doesn't make you an expert. It exposes whether you are already are one. Anyone can open ChatGPT. We know that. Anyone can paste in a brief and get something back that looks like strategy. The problem is that most people can't tell the difference between output that sounds right and output that actually is right. So then he says a little bit more, and he comes back to the fact that he is a businessman. He knows how to use AI like you. You've made it your job to learn how to use it properly. And he says, my clients aren't paying for AI. They are paying for 16 years that make the AI useful. The tool is free. The tradesperson isn't. And then you commented, you said, this is such an important distinction. AI compresses the time it takes to produce something that looks strategic, but it doesn't compress the years of pattern recognition required to know whether that output is actually right. Two people can use the same tool and get similar outputs. The difference is that the expert immediately sees what's usable, what's risky, and what needs to be reworked. So, in many ways, AI isn't replacing expertise. It's making the gap between expertise and inexperience far more visible. The tool may be free, repeating what Paul said. Knowing what to do with it isn't. And that was so powerful. I had to act on that. That's what when I sent you the invitation to come and talk to me on this podcast, because that is so powerful that AI is actually stupid, but it can recognize context. It can draw from a large training data set, so it can give you answers on everything. I often say that it is PhD level clever on everything, but it still comes knocking on your door and say, what do you want me to do? And if you just let it go, yes, then we get problems. But if you can utilize that within the context of being a human with expertise of X amount of years, then it becomes a very powerful tool in that craftsman's hands. And we need to look at that in the context of education. Because my understanding of the world right now, as it stands, my research indicates that, and I say this in probably every single podcast, so I'm going to start sounding like a broken gramophone record, but teachers are told to use AI to be better in terms of time management. So they can do their lesson plans. They can ask it to come up with questions for the subject, different levels of cognitive difficulty for the learners. They can do their reports, their analysis. They can do everything with the AI, but the learners are not allowed to use AI. There's this general direction of the kids use AI, you're going to get stupid. You're going to dumb down. But the teachers can use AI because it's going to make them faster. And there doesn't seem to be a scope for the learners, for the kids, to also learn AI. And I find that strange. That's the first thing I would like to get your opinion on, as somebody who really pushes AI, the use of AI. What is your opinion on children using AI as a learning tool? Okay, not as a best friend, like Magda said. It's not supposed to be your best friend. You still need your human connection. I heard a video the other day. In a video, a guy said, find something that AI can never do for you, and you'll understand the difference. And the example he used was AI can never go to a party on your behalf. It cannot go to a concert on your behalf. It cannot go and enjoy a hamburger on your behalf. That's something that you as a human can do. So the human touch, I actually have a podcast with a person tomorrow morning that, and I also called on one line that he says for us to be better at AI, we actually need to be more human. And I found that very profound. We need to be more human to get the best out of AI, not dumbed down. So speaking on the kids, the children, yes, there is the possibility of corruption of their brains. They might get addicted to the technology, like we often think they are addicted to games and Facebook and social media in general. But there still seems to be scope for the kids, to use AI. So I'd like to hear what you say on that. And then also teachers. And what are teachers supposed to be doing with this tool that we call artificial intelligence?
Okay, so firstly, anything can corrupt and damage anybody when they're not trained on how to use it effectively. And one thing that is true about kids, and anyone who's a parent knows this, the more you try and stop a kid from doing something, the more they're going to do it. Right. So here's the thing. Whether people like it or not, kids are already playing with AI. Okay. Now, if you're going to allow AI to take them down the LLM tunnel, well, yeah, then things are going to happen. Is there room for AI in education, both for the teachers and for the children? Absolutely. 100%. But again, it comes down to how you are using it. If the teacher is just, before I get to that point, there's one thing I want to go back to the calculator. And the reason that one always hits me is because one of my strengths is math. Because when I was in school, you get caught with a calculator and your hands literally get chopped off. You were not allowed to use calculators because you must be able to do maths with your head, because it's going to help you in life. And I agree with all of that 100%. But then at the time, the belief was if you give someone a calculator, they're going to be dumb. Well, guess what? Now calculators are everywhere. Is everybody dumb? No, they're not. Absolutely not. Why? Because they've been taught to use the calculator properly. So now let's take that lesson to AI. If the teacher is just going to go there and say, what's the best way for me to represent the root of 999 to my class? What is that AI doing? It's going to the LLM and it's presenting in a way that the teacher doesn't present. So there's already two misalignments. First one, that's not the way the teacher has been teaching. And the second one is that's not the way the students have been taught. Now, if that teacher took its way of teaching and fed the AI, did a brain dump, and then said to it, tomorrow I need to explain the root of 999 to my class. They seem to have been struggling because they don't get the concept of blah, blah, blah. So how can I present it in a way that a 13-year-old child will understand it? Now you've got a different story. Now it's talking to her knowledge, her understanding, and aligning it with who you're teaching. Because that's also very important. When I create content using my AI, it's not just about who I am and the message I want to get out, but who will I be talking to with this message? Because that's important. So whether I talk to a CEO, an accountant, a business owner, or an entrepreneur, I've got to talk different ways. So that teacher's got to say, my class consists of male and female from this age to that age, blah, blah. Now you can align the teaching with the students. So where do the students come in? Well, you give them access to the AI that has been taught by the teacher, which means it's not getting the nonsense from the LLM, it's getting what the teacher has put in. So it's almost like them having access to the teacher anytime and getting answers quickly. Please tell me that is not an advantage. Someone tell me that's not an advantage, because then you're going to be lying. Now, you're talking about remote learning as something that exploded because of 2020. And guess what? It's going to continue growing, right? I mean, you look at what's happening in the Middle East with this war. A lot of the surrounding countries have pushed students home and are doing remote learning. That's where AI is going to come in handy, because the student only has access to the AI that's been taught by the teacher on math, on English, on Afrikaans, on science, on biology, whatever the topic is. And they only getting responses from the teacher in a virtual manner. How is that not of benefit? So is there place for it? Absolutely, when trained and used properly.
Okay, but now here is the reality problem, and that takes me to the conversation of agents. Is you and I and the teachers don't have access to the training data and the training systems of, for instance, OpenAI. You can train it within the memory of your account, your profile, but how do you get that training, that memory, into the student's profile so that they can get the benefit of the teacher? And that is where I found the disconnect happens. Because yes, you can train an adult to use the AI, like you say, properly by teaching a person how to program the memory of, let's say, for argument's sake, ChatGPT. You can train ChatGPT to start recognizing your style, your beliefs, your ethics, everything, but you cannot transfer that to another chat unless it's saved in memory of your profile, and you certainly can't transfer that from one profile to the other. And that's why kids are stopped from using AI, because they might actually get into this space where the AI can start not recognizing, but predicting what they are not interested in, and start feeding them things that might get them interested in that. Now, I can't remember the specific name of this app, but I saw a documentary by 60 Minutes a couple of months ago, where there is this specific app that really exploded worldwide, and it's supposed to be an AI friend for the kids. It's literally an agent that was given out to the kids, and then they can speak to it when they're lonely, when they're being bullied, etc. But there were actually documented suicides where where the parents would then go into the chat history, and they would see how the AI prompted them to, yeah, take your life, it's fine, that's a good thing to do. Don't take your antidepressants. This is how you hide it from your parents. Those type of things, because the AI is just a machine. I mean, yes, it sounds very articulate and it sounds like it's your best friend, but I think if you really want a good friend, don't get a dog. Don't go to AI as a friend, because ultimately it operates on predictability and probability. There's mathematics behind everything. It's an algorithm. So when we look at the kids and we cannot get a trained sample to them, and we cannot train them to prompt properly because they are too young, they don't have the life experience and maturity to know how to immediately prompt correctly. In terms of what you are teaching adults, we cannot teach that to a grade 4 or a grade 5 learner. They are just too young to understand the importance of the training of the memory or inside a chat. What I have got, and I'm not sure if you've researched my AI agent, but what we've done is we found a way which is called agents, where you put something in between the LLM and the user. That little agent can be trained. And a better way to understand the training is it can have guardrails. So you can tell it to not move outside of the guardrails. And I have personal experience that it doesn't. I've tried my AI agent where I would give it certain questions that doesn't fall within the guardrails, and it will just say, sorry, can't help you, which obviously is a good thing. Now,
Mhm.
when we talk about, and this is the concept that has come up in every single podcast that I've had so far with teachers and educators, is that what you call training of the teacher being given to the child, to the learner, there's a fancy word that they use for that called pedagogy. So the teacher, that training that the teacher gives its own agent that you actually want for the child, for the learners, is just called pedagogy. So we need to get the teachers involved in AI in education. Don't sit out there on the sidelines, see what happens in the world, and say, okay, I will, like the calculators. I mean, teachers were not involved in calculators. They were not involved. The calculators were developed by engineers and just pushed into the world, and slowly everybody adapted. But what I'm saying, and the message that I'm trying to get out on this podcast, is teachers get involved. Put up your hand and say, you know what, I'm a history teacher. I know the pedagogy of history is X, Y, and Z. I'm a biology teacher. I'm a language teacher. I'm a math teacher. The pedagogy that is important for the learners is da 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 da. And we need to get the teachers involved in this process. Literally get involved in writing
Mhm.
those instructions for the agent. So, what are your thoughts on? I mean, you're more than welcome to ask, to interrogate my limited knowledge on the agentic approach. But I have a working agent that actually teaches mathematics and other subjects within guardrails. So I know it works. It's not faultless, for sure, because it can still drift, and it still sometimes doesn't follow my instructions. But generally speaking, it actually becomes the teacher in the afternoons
Mm.
times million for the kids. So come at that from two angles, the agent for the kids and the teachers coming on board as
Mm.
trainers from your experience as a business coach. And I don't know if you have any interaction these days with teachers or schools, but just tap into your experience as somebody who trains people on AI. What do you think of
Mm.
that approach?
Okay, so firstly, around the agent, like I said earlier, I haven't delved into that topic much, but my basic understanding of it is what you have explained, which is you are literally providing it with its LLM, and you're saying to it, and this is where you work. You don't work outside that parameter. That's basically what I was saying, just more advanced. What you're doing is you're taking the trained, where I'm training the AI, you've taken that out and you've put it into a um, different tool that can then be accessed by many. Perfect. I think that's exactly what needs to happen. Now, how do you get teachers involved? And I can talk to that specifically because it basically comes down to the same thing as how do you generate leads online? Well, firstly, you need to know who you're talking to. Then you need to know what are their challenges, what are their pain points, what are their goals, what are they aiming for, and then you need to show them how what you are saying benefits them. So AI as a tool for education needs to be sold to the teachers in a way that says to them, you're going to have more time for your students and for yourself and your family. Because through the AI tool, you're going to get things done quicker and more effectively. I mean, one of the things you mentioned is, me teaching a 4 or 5 year old how to use AI. Let me answer you this way. I will do it. But here's how I will do it. I will do it with the use of AI. Because one thing that I've done, and quite a few people have already used it, is what I called a self-guiding mega prompt. Basically, what that is I create, in some cases, the prompt is 7 pages long. I create a prompt that says, you are going to be teaching a 5-year-old student how to use AI for his benefit. You need to ask him the following questions so that you have an understanding of how good is he with computers, what does he understand about computers, and you must do all of this in the language that a 5-year-old understands. So that at the end, all that 5-year-old does is he copies those 7 pages, pastes it into AI and presses enter. And AI starts asking him or her questions. They answer. Based on that, it moves. And at the end, it gives them a summary. If you're happy with it, save to memory, now it knows me. So what what the teachers can do is they can provide more personalized training for their students easier and a lot quicker and more effectively, because now you can do self-guided prompts. I mean, you could literally create a self-guided prompt to present a test to your students. So your self-guided prompt would be in your agent. So you tell the students, go and access here and press enter. They answer, they put in their name. AI then reviews everything and tells you if they passed or failed. Now, how much time does that free from educators? How much more effective is that for students? So in short, absolutely, education must look at it. There's no doubts about it.
Just in terms of the assessments, yes, you can get the AI to produce questions, from a prompt. What's your word that you called that 7-page prompt?
I call it a self-guided mega prompt.
Self-guided mega prompts. Love that word. First time I'm hearing that, but I love that word. Self-guided mega prompt. So you can give the student that self-guided mega prompt. That student will literally paste that in as a prompt, like help me. It's just a longer version of help me. And then the AI will follow that prompt to the letter, or pretty much to the letter. But the answers that the student gives in that test or that assessment cannot be captured by the teacher. There's no linking that answer back to a central database or something. Yes, what do you?
It actually can.
How do you do that?
It actually can. At the end of that mega prompt, you tell the mega prompt to write a summary of the answers and send it to an email address, and it will send it.
Yes, okay, but that means in order to send via email, you will need an agent. Because there is
Yes,
it
yes.
needs to be sent from a specific email address, and therefore it needs to have access to the SMTP server. It needs to have access to the username and the password, etc. But I mean, yes, it can say save my responses in a Word file, and then the student can WhatsApp that Word file back to the teacher. But still, it doesn't have the integrity of an assessment room. So it can be used for assessment of knowledge, baseline assessments, but I doubt if that will be used as formal assessment, because there are other tools, that can be used online that has the integrity of assessments. But what you are touching on, two things that I picked up. Number one, the mega prompt is pretty much the training that needs to go into the AI agent. So rather than a teacher sitting there and writing a 2 or 3 or 7-page prompt, you can get involved in doing that once. You modify it slightly, you tweak it slightly, so it becomes a generic pedagogy that the AI agent can interpret from the context of the conversation with the student. I literally have had cases where if I start within the agent, if I start the question with, please help me, or I don't understand, or I don't know what to do, 3 different introductions from me as a student, the AI agent responds differently every single time in where it starts, what it does, what it does next. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it has explained the question, like I instructed it to do in my training instructions, which is my mega prompt. But
Right.
the AI agent, this is what makes it so brilliant, because it can actually change the way in which it responds from a language perspective. And the beauty for me as an educator in that is that the teacher suddenly becomes available for every single student outside of the classroom. And that's, I think, what is the important thing for teachers to understand, is that they can only do so much in a 45-minute period. Let's be honest, you cannot do more than what 45 minutes allows you to do. And if you've got a class, I had a conversation, my episode 2 of the podcast. I think, no, it was episode 2, episode 3. I think episode 3 was Zonke Ngidi. She was telling the story of in Umtata in Eastern Cape. She walked into a school where there's something like 100 grade 12 learners, 100 of them sitting in one class. They're sharing chairs. That's how, they're literally sharing a chair. um, it's ridiculous to expect that teacher who sits standing there at the front trying to explain calculus or logarithms or series and sequences to actually get to every single one of those 100 learners. It's impossible. Just to get 1 minute per child means you have to have 100 minutes dedicated time, and that's almost 2 hours. Just to get 1 minute for every child. So when the children go home and they now need to do homework on logarithms or calculus, they need their teacher. And the teacher suddenly becomes available in the AI, in the form of the AI. So Lauren Joly argues that iron did not replace bronze because it was superior. It replaced it because it was abundant. Bronze was powerful but scarce. Iron was widely available. And when societies needed scale, abundance changed everything. As we begin today's discussion on AI in education, that analogy frames our conversation. So we're not starting this conversation, we're already deep into this, but that analogy can frame the conversation from the sense of abundance. Abundance changes everything. The issue is not whether AI replaces great teaching or great teachers. That's not the issue, whether it replaces a great teacher, but whether abundant, accessible tutoring time can help us address learning gaps at scale, and this is the important conclusion, in a world where scarcity of support is the real challenge. So when we look at the teachers using AI, they can use your normal large language model. They don't need necessarily to use an agent to get a proper lesson plan, for grade 5s or grade 7s or something. They don't need an agent to come up with good questions that you can ask it in history questions, for instance. You tell it, listen, the curriculum says we must do this and this and this from the Second World War, and it will come up with the most brilliant questions that you can ask your learners in history. But when the child goes home in the afternoon and they need to reinforce what they learned in school so that they can actually go back a couple of weeks later and pass a test being assessed on that, they need to learn. And everybody is in agreement that learning is difficult. It's hard work. If learning isn't hard work, it's not learning. So if you don't help that child during that hard part of learning, they're just not going to do it because it's hard. There's no encouragement, there's no support. So my thinking in this whole conversation of AI in education is that we can use AI as a learning tool. It is quite possible, but we need an agent that is trained in the pedagogy of the subject in which it is supposed to be teaching or supporting that child. The benefit for the teacher, as you said, is that the teacher becomes better in the sense that they become available via technology, which the calculator never could do. Calculator cannot replicate the teacher in the afternoons for the kids. AI can. And the reason it can is because of the context that it can recognize. It can actually have a conversation with a child within certain guardrails. And yes, parental oversight is important. Let me stress that. We're not saying just give your child an AI tool and say, off you go. You need to go and look at the conversations. You need to, flag if something is inappropriate, because ultimately it is still a machine. It can drift. It can hallucinate. You cannot outsource or delegate your parental responsibility to a machine. That's irresponsible. It shouldn't be done. But that machine can replicate the good teachers, which is a benefit. Your comments on that?
No, absolutely. You know, one comment that I'm always commenting against on LinkedIn and other platforms is when people start saying, oh, AI is replacing writers and it's replacing accountants and can it replace me? And my answer to that is very simple. AI is not going to replace you, but someone who can use AI better than you will. So you see, and the reason I mention that is now if you bring it back to education and teachers, AI is not going to replace the teacher. Okay, the teacher is still required. But if AI is used as a tool by the teacher can reach more students quicker, more effectively. So it's going to allow the teacher to scale up their impact on the students. And at the end of the day, and this is something certain countries need to think about very, very, very carefully. The future of any nation sits in the schools. That next generation is going to be the people that are going to run that country. So if you are pumping out a bunch of dummies, your country is in trouble. So what we should be looking at is how can automation, how can technology be leveraged to improve that situation? If you think about it, it's actually, especially in the initial stages, going to require more teachers because someone has to feed that information into the agents and someone has to test it and double check and correct to ensure the information is there. And then, as a byproduct, the fact that you can reach more students more often, guess what? You're going to need more teachers. So if people just get out of this mindset of initially resisting anything new, then maybe we can get to the next level a lot quicker. One of the things I have never done and never do is I do not resist change. Doesn't mean I accept all change. No. What it does mean is whenever there's change, I say, okay, hold on. What is the change? What's it changing from? What's it changing to? How does it benefit me? How can I use it? Now I'm better placed to actually leverage it and take advantage of it or let it go. Whereas when you're resisting, you're learning nothing. And guess what? Eventually, that resistance is going to get crumbled because it's just going to take over and then you're not ready. So absolutely, it is something that should be embraced by education because it has huge potential, and your agent situation is exactly, in my view, from the little knowledge I have on what you have explained, what is required, because that agent ultimately is the teacher. And basically what you're doing is you're allowing students access to the teacher 24/7, 365. How can that not be of benefit to the students, the educator, and the country as a whole?
That is the question that I'm trying to answer. That was literally the idea behind starting this podcast is how can it not be beneficial? If we can figure out how to operate it properly, get the teachers to understand they are irreplaceable, as long as they don't, like you rightly said, don't resist it, because you're going to be left behind. that is unfortunately reality. If you keep on resisting it, the train is going to leave the station, the boat is going to sail, you're going to be left behind. But it doesn't come into the marketplace to replace you. It comes in the marketplace to duplicate you, to strengthen your hand. So, are we in agreement, Carlos, you and me, at this point in this conversation, that AI is actually capable of being a learning tool?
Absolutely. I train my AI every day.
Okay, so
And
so
it's
we can.
learning, and it's learning from me. So, in terms of a learning tool in the education, absolutely. The way education needs to look at it, teachers specifically, and even students, is all AI is another tool in the teacher's toolbox. They have books, they have their support structure, they have the way they work, and now they have AI in their toolbox. That's all it is. It's another tool in the toolbox to be leveraged so that they can be more effective.
Well, we can put this in a different way. I mean, if you are a teacher in a modern era, I mean, when I was at school, this wasn't a possibility, and I wish it was, but it wasn't. Where today's kids can sit, for instance, in a geography class, and they can look in that class with the, uh, let's call it the narration of the teacher, to a YouTube video explaining cloud formations. I had to look at pictures in a textbook when I was at school. That was it. That was the technology. I mean, you were lucky if you had a full color picture. You know, it was normally
Yeah.
just black and white. Today, you can actually see an animation on a YouTube video of how the clouds are forming and how
Mhm.
raindrops form, and it enhances learning by from the teacher. It enhances learning to the learners by giving them access to technology. I think the distinction with AI is it shouldn't replace class time, face time between the teacher and the kids in the class. That is not what we're saying. We're saying when the teacher is not available, the AI agent can step in and say, let me help
Mhm.
you. And I can give you 20 exercises, or I can give you one exercise, or I can give it to you mixed, or I can just listen to your question first. You know, whichever. This AI agent can pretty much do whatever you want it to do, apart from maybe making coffee. You know, until we've got robots, it's not going to make you coffee, but it can do um, cognitively. It can do whatever the teacher wants. So how do we move on from here? From your experience now, as a, let's call it a people coach. You know, you deal with the human psyche, you deal with the human behind the LinkedIn profile. How would you suggest we approach this now, going to parents who might be resistant to their kids using AI, and teachers who might be scared that their job is threatened? What is a good way to take it from here? And then hopefully we can get this video, once it's published, we can get this video to all those people that you are now going to address in your State of the Nation address.
State of the nation address. Okay, that's a dangerous one. Okay, anyway, um, let me go back to what I basically use in my LinkedIn world with my clients, and basically how I teach people to put their profile out there so that they are attracting their ideal clients, which in this case is the educators and the students and the parents. When someone visits your LinkedIn profile, they have one question that you have to answer in 7 to 10 seconds, because that's the attention span you get from them. And that question is very simple. What can you do for me? That's all they want to know. So relate that to the question you've just asked me. How do we get the teachers, the parents, the students to buy into this? You've got to show them what is the benefit to them. What's in it for them? Because, whether you like it or not, in anything in life, any decision anyone makes, the ultimate priority is what's in it for me. Now, I know people say, oh, but that's being selfish. Come on, let's be real. That's just life. You got
Well,
to
I mean,
take
if
care of.
you go to the shop, and you buy bread, it's because you want bread. You're the
You've got to,
client, you come
yeah,
to the store and you want a specific brand of bread. You don't buy all the
exactly.
others that are there, you buy the one
Yeah.
that you want. So it's not
Right.
selfish, it's reality.
No, but but people will say it's selfish. If you turn around and say, any decision I make, it's about what's in it for me. But the reality is, if I don't take care of number one, I can do nothing about number two, three, four, or five. Okay. So if we show parents, teachers, students what's in it for them in the AI world, that's the only way you're going to get buy-in from them. One thing we are very good at, whether it's private, whether it's government, whether it's politician, doesn't matter. One thing we are very good at and fail at every time is force things down people's throats. That's where you get resistance. Why? I mean, if I think back to my corporate years when I was running businesses, the only way I could get my staff to buy into change is by presenting the change to them, demonstrating the impact it's going to have on them, and that ultimately benefits them. That way they buy in. I don't have to force anything. They just go with the flow. So you got to do the same thing here. You can't just say all of a sudden, we are using AI, and if you don't like it, well, get off the train. No, get people to sit around a table, to brainstorm, and show them what the benefit is to them. Then the resistance is gone. They're going to be so busy brainstorming with you that the idea of resistance has disappeared.
There's ownership if you feel like you've developed the idea, or you had
Exactly.
a role in developing the idea. So if I hear you correctly, you're saying that's a psychology that
Is
should be used with AI, is not the threat, not the scaremongering, not the I'm coming for your job type of conspiracy theory, but come on board, teachers, parents, kids, tell us what you want, tell us what you need, tell us what needs to be done, give us the guardrails, etc., so that we can develop this into a tool that benefits the young ones. Because ultimately, everybody else that we are talking about in this analogy are adults. They're already established wherever they are. But the kids today, I mean, if you look at the speed at which this AI world is changing, a kid that is a child that is in let's say grade 5, grade 4 today, not even the pre-primary school, the foundation phase, just normal grade 4, grade 5, they've got 9 years before they matriculate. Imagine what the world is going to look like 9 years from now if it has taken
I'd
3
rather
years
not.
since
I get it
2023.
all wrong.
Yeah, I don't think Sam Altman constantly tries, and Dario Amodei constantly try to predict, but I mean, what we can say is we don't know. And
No,
what we need to understand is that we cannot throw those young ones to the wolves by letting them stick to a system that has worked for 200 or 300 years. Yes, it has worked for 200, 300 years. The Victorian system of schooling has worked up to about maybe the internet age. Then things have started to change slightly, but even 2020, I think everything really, like you said at the beginning, everything changed in 2020. But thinking of the young ones, ultimately, whatever we design, ultimately, whatever we build and whatever we put out there needs to benefit the next generation. You called them the generation that's going to be running the country. Let's remember that. We cannot throw them to the wolves. We cannot put them in a box where they are not allowed to use technology. And I see so many schools, and I'm probably going to get a lot of kickback from this, but I see a lot of schools proudly claiming that they are becoming cell phone free schools. And yes, there's merit in this. I do understand why they are doing it. But are they not closing the door on technology integration in that child's life? Rather than managing it, putting proper policies in place, they're just banning it. And they're proud of banning it.
Hmm.
It's something they are literally claiming as bragging
Hmm.
rights that we are blocking access to technology in school hours. And
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? Just
No,
suddenly
look,
thinking
again,
of your
again,
opinion.
again, my opinion, and I'm talking as a a business person, I'm talking as a father. When you consistently enforce change on others, you're going to get resistance. And that's where you get people pushing the luck, pushing the line, and doing things you didn't want them to do. So, yes, we've got to think that the ultimate impact is on the student. That's why I say the best way to move forward in getting AI into the education system is you've got to bring the teacher, the parent, the kid, get them around a table, present to them what you see and what the benefits could be, and then open it to them to say, so come, give me your part. Because let's face it, I don't care how much knowledge you have, I don't care how smart AI is, I can never truly know what goes on in your head and what you actually want. So if I want to know for sure, I must ask you. So let's bring the students, the teachers, and the parents around the table and ask them and say to them, here's what we're presenting and here's what we think. What do you think? Now, what are you doing? You're totally removing resistance out of the way because you're not saying to them, this is what we're going to do. You're saying to them, here's an idea. What are your thoughts? You're pulling them into the discussion. And I can guarantee you that at the end of that, you're going to have a solution. And it's not going to be the solution you thought of because
Okay,
you
so
brought in three parties that would otherwise not have been in the discussion. I mean, brainstorming has been proven and continues to deliver results. Why? Because that's when you get different people around a table talking about one topic from many different directions. That's what it's got to be. Can't be the education minister saying, from now on, boom. Then you're going to get resistance. You've got to bring them into the discussion. Then you're going to get the buy in. And like I said, you're going to find that they are going to bring up things that you never thought of that can even speed up the process.
so I want to, at that point, come back to the fact that this podcast is available on YouTube. So we don't know who is going to watch this exact episode, but if you are watching this and you are either a parent or a student or a teacher, put out in the comments that you would like to come on board. And we'll ask Carlos if he wants to sit in on every single one of those conversations, maybe. But this is an open invitation. The brainstorming session, Carlos, that you've just explained, this is my little effort into saying if you have an opinion that you want to come and share, either as a parent or an educator, if you want to bring a child on board, I would strongly advise against that. You know, there's a lot of legal implications of getting children on video. Even YouTube warns against it when I publish the video. But you can certainly come with the viewpoint of your child. As a parent, come on board and tell me. I mean, this doesn't have to be part of this long form format that we're currently doing in terms of AI in education, where I'm speaking to people about the concept in general, and we're trying to slash things out. We can have a 5 or a 10-minute conversation about what you think should be done in AI to benefit your child. Or if you're a teacher, what should be done? I mean, that's why YouTube has got comments. Go on there, comment, and we will get in touch with you and invite you as a guest in a short form, maybe short video, something. However, Carlos, I also want to give you the opportunity to put yourself out there as somebody that people can reach. I'll put your LinkedIn profile address in the comments. And if you've got something else, you can just pass them on to me if you want to be reachable via WhatsApp or email or website. I'll put all of that information of yours out in the comments. But this is your opportunity to tell people what can you do for them in this context of teachers and parents in AI in education. And then if you want to throw in a little thing there for your own business, for general clients, feel free. I won't say if you won't say.
No. There's no need to do the latter, but the former I'm happy to get into. So anybody that wants to experience AI as a thinking partner for any topic, please feel free to reach out to me. One thing I do for everybody is I always offer the first 45-minute consultation free. So come and take the idea for a test ride and see for yourself. One thing I can say is once you publish this online, please share the link with me, and I'm more than happy to do a post on LinkedIn saying what you just said. If you're a teacher, if you're a parent, if you're a student, and you want to say something, say it. Be heard, be noticed, become part of the discussion, because I'm going to stick my neck out here. Accept that this is going to happen. So you either become part of the solution or become one of those that complains the solution is not what you wanted. So to avoid that, become part of the discussion. Get involved. Say what you need to say. And I will post that on LinkedIn to attract more attention to the topic. In my view, honestly, it's already happening. And here's one thing about AI. Like I mentioned earlier on, that genie is not going back in the bottle. The bottle's gone. And if you thought technology was moving fast, now it's flying. AI is making things happen literally overnight, and people, whether you like it or not, majority of the global population touches AI in one way or another, because guess what? You've got a smartphone. Hello, AI is in there. So it's here to stay. Work with it or work against it. I can tell you, working with it is much nicer, less painful.
It is much nicer because it makes you, as you said, in that article I quoted. Let me read that again in closing. I want to read that your response again. AI compresses the time it takes to produce something that looks strategic. Okay, so AI compresses the time. It doesn't take you 5 days, it can take you 5 minutes. But it doesn't compress the years of pattern recognition required to know whether that output is actually right. So we still need the educators. We still need the teachers. Can't replace them because they know what is actually right. And then in many ways, AI isn't replacing expertise. It's making the gap between expertise and inexperience far more visible. That's what you're saying. Get on board, not because the world is telling you to, because you understand that it's making the gap between expertise and experience far more visible. Do you really want to shine as the person who doesn't know what's going on? Is that the spotlight that you want on you? Or do you want to become part of the discussion, which is what I'm inviting you for, and what Carlos is also inviting you for, is be part of the discussion. Come and say your say. And the tool may be free, but knowing what to do with it isn't. And like Richard Feynman, I don't know if you've ever heard this quote of Richard Feynman. Do you know who Richard Feynman is? Or was? Very, very famous scientist, but he had such a novel way of teaching. And he said, knowledge isn't free. You have to pay attention.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I mean, that is so powerful. You have to pay attention. If you don't want to pay money, sure, fair enough, we understand that, but you have to still pay attention. And come on board. We're opening the platform for discussions on this. Come and say your say so that it all forms part of this discussion towards making it better as a learning tool for the benefit of the children. Carlos, anything else from your side?
No, I think that's it. Firstly, thank you for the invitation. I'm always open to discussing anything with anybody that I have knowledge in. And in that case, I can literally talk for hours without having anything scripted or practiced anything. It's definitely a subject that is close to my heart at the moment and that I'm very focused on because, like I said, it's not going back in the bottle and it's only getting bigger and better. And anything that is bigger and better, I go try and figure out if I can use it to my benefit so that I can then teach other people to use it for their benefit. That's been the case with AI. So for me, it's AI all the way. Whoop, whoop. I'm there. There's no resistance on my side. So, and it's been an interesting discussion. It's not a route that I've gone into before, but I totally enjoyed it because it also challenged me in my thinking to adapt what I know to a different sector. And it's just proven to me, and when I prove things to myself, I become dangerous. It's proven to me that my thinking around AI can be applied literally anywhere. So thank you for the opportunity. I enjoyed the discussion, and I look forward to where this is going from here.
And thank you from my side for taking the time. I've taken about twice your 45-minute allocation for free for this podcast. So I thank you very much for allowing yourself the time to come and have this talk with me.
You're welcome.
Really is appreciated. And thank you for that article, because that literally, that insightful answer on that article really prompted this conversation. And this might then go worldwide. Who knows? But just by availing yourself for this conversation, I think we've dug into a couple of very profound aspects of the conversation. So thank you from my side as well. And you must have yourself a great day.
You're welcome, Gerrie. You're welcome. And you too. You too. Thank you very much.